On November 5th, 2016, I killed a doe on public land with archery equipment. This was a significant hunt for me for several reasons. The first is the first time I've ever taken a deer with a compound bow, and actually the first season I've ever been bow hunting in my life. It's also the first time I've harvested a deer in many years, and the first time I've really gotten back into the sport. Additionally, it's the first time I've ever filmed a hunt before, and it's also a deer that I took on public land, which is the first public land kill that I've had ever. So there was a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous challenge in getting within archery range of this animal and then harvesting it, and it's hopefully the first of many. The setup is we were kind of hunting a bull on the Alabama-Georgia border, just on the Alabama side, on some public land in the central parts of both of those states. The Chattahoochee River is just to the north of the area that I was hunting, and the wind direction was blowing out of the east and into the west. Now in that bowl there was some water. It was kind of like a pond, and it was an active watering hole that I had seen animals at during summer scouting. The temperature outside was 70 degrees, so still pretty warm for this part of the year, so I figured that the animals would likely be waking up, going about their evening routine, but first coming to that watering hole and hitting it before they continued their movement. Now I had identified a suspected bedding area off to the west in the high ground, specifically on the 1/3 elevation line of a series of points where I had identified both doe bedding, and then I suspected that there was also likely buck bedding in the area. So there's also a very well-worn game trail heading down from that bedding area to where the watering hole is, and then skirting the edge of that watering hole before moving through a saddle and then out into the big woods. Along that game trail, I had identified 2 scrapes during my scouting, so I set a game camera out and I let it sit for about 2 weeks. And when I pulled the card on that camera, I had 6 different bucks on cam, most moving in the evening, some during the day. And then I also had a family of does and a couple fawns that were moving during daylight. So with that knowledge and understanding that, yeah, it was still warm and it's going to be a hard hunt, but I had animals moving in the area, I knew I needed to get in there quickly and hunt it before the gun pressure picked up on the Alabama side. So then the second challenge was figuring out where to put my stand and how to access it. So I elected to put my stand on the northern side of that game trail, understanding that the wind is typically easterly, so it's going to be tough to hunt this thing on a good wind. So I put the stand just on the east side of that game trail, about 50 yards away from where the camera had been located. And when I accessed it, I actually walked in the direction of the wind, which was a tremendous challenge. So I used extreme scent control prior to, and then I walked in about half mile nice and slow and really early in the evening. I was set by like 2 o'clock. And I didn't head south at all until it was absolutely the last minute, because I was really concerned about my scent being carried from my stand location into the vicinity of the bedding area, and I knew if that happened, I wouldn't see anything all night. So I stayed as far north as possible until the last minute. Then I jumped over the saddle, got up in the stand, sprayed down with a scent killer one more time, and got set. At about 5:30, I saw some deer appear for the first time, and that was enough right there to get my heart pounding, because it's so rare to see deer from the stand on public land, especially in the big woods. There's no baiting allowed, lures are very limited, and there's no major food plots. There's acorns all over the place, so the deer can pretty much go wherever they want this time of year and eat whatever they want, so it's very difficult to predict their movement. So as soon as I saw a deer, I knew I had gotten it right, and I was getting excited. So a doe and 2 fawns appeared at the watering hole about 75 yards away from me. They had no idea I was there. I glassed them, got a good range, and I watched them eat acorns and drink from that watering hole for about 30 minutes before they continued moving. They were real calm, heads down. The ears would occasionally go up, and Mom would look around, make sure there was no immediate threats, but she had no idea I was there, and they kind of went about their routine. I knew if that doe came in range, I was going to take her, just because I didn't know what the chances were of seeing a buck. I hadn't killed any deer at all this year, and I wanted to get on the board. So after about half an hour of watching them at about 50 yards or 60 yards, that watering hole, they stood up and they started moving along the game trail, kind of like I predicted. They followed it almost to a T, right past that first scrape. Obviously, those does aren't necessarily working the scrape, but it's evidence that there's animals regularly using it. And because I was sitting on a pinch between the watering hole and the high ground, I knew that they'd be funneled right past me. So that doe actually had a fawn in front of her and a fawn behind her. The fawn in front of her was getting a little bit adventurous and actually wandered over towards my stand, stopped about 5-10 yards away from me, underneath me. And of course the fawn's absolutely oblivious, just, pawing at the ground and eating acorns and not looking up hardly at all. Mom, on the other hand, was getting a little bit more alert. So the doe and the second fawn followed behind that first fawn and stopped at about 22, 23 yards away from me. And right about that time, since they had now moved more west of me, I was a little bit concerned about my scent. And sure enough, the wind swirled just a tad. You could feel it, 3, 4, 5 miles per hour swirling. And the doe must have caught a smell of my scent, because she went into high alert right away. If I hadn't moved at all, I was sitting there with my bow in hand, getting ready to go to full draw, and she freaking tail went up, ears went up in alert, and her head went up. She started looking around and was quickly kind of zeroing in on where I was at in the stand. About that time, I got my release put on my string loop, and I was getting ready to draw back, and you could hear the pounding of my heart in my camera. So I had a hat on, I had my GoPro over the hat, and you could still hear my heartbeat through the veins in my forehead. I mean, it was unreal. And hey, it's just a doe. Say whatever you want to say, but anytime you get that close to a whitetail with a chance to harvest it, your blood pressure goes up. So she stomped a little bit. She kind of looked up towards me, and she walked forward into my shooting lane. I had just like a split second to send it, and I actually held off because she was quartering kind of towards me, and I didn't want to put an arrow into her shoulder blade. She stopped a little bit, kind of looked up in my direction again. One of the fawns spooked and moved about 5 yards. And at that point, the doe started stomping the ground a little bit, kind of signaling to the fawns that it was time to leave. About that time, she turned around and she started walking back in the direction they came. She was at 22 yards from me, quartering away. And I was already at full draw. I held full draw for like 90 seconds, my heart just pounding the entire time. And right as she started moving away from me, quartering away, I sent it. The arrow impacted high, kind of severing her spine in line with her right front leg while she was quartering away. Because of my elevation, the position I was at on the stand, the arrow was coming down, and it passed through one of her lungs, clipped her spine, and actually exited in vicinity of her heart. The two fawns spooked and ran right away. She fell over about 5 yards from where I had initially hit her. She was alive for about 30 seconds, and then she expired right there on the spot. I'm a little upset that I hit her as high as I did, but I am pleased that it was an ethical kill and that she was dispatched quickly. I sat there for another hour, saw one more deer way out of range, and then climbed down from my stand, went and cleaned my harvest, and got the picture. She dressed out right at 77 pounds, and I couldn't be more pleased with the way this hunt went, and I look forward to having a good wind in a few weeks. A few weeks go by, and then I'm going to get back out here in this location and see if I can find that mature 8-point. Here at Send It, we're passionate about this stuff. If you're the average hunter, you don't have access to a big lease or an expensive outfitter. You're hunting highly pressured public land, and you earn every single animal you take. If you learned something or felt something while you were watching this video, I ask that you subscribe to the channel and join us for these incredible moments.